Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive, and Happy New Year. Today, we're taking a look at the investing iguana, which gives us a daily dose of what's happening in the markets.
Yeah, so it's January 2nd, 2025, and we've got some pretty interesting market movers to cover today, both in Singapore and beyond.
Definitely. So, where do we start?
Well, let's kick things off with NIO.
NIO, the EV maker.
That's right, ticker symbol NIO. They just announced some record-breaking numbers for Q4, delivered over 72,000 vehicles.
Wow, 72,000. That's impressive.
It is, and December was especially strong for them, which is interesting because the EV market is getting more and more competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. So many new players coming into the market.
Right, and yet NIO is pulling ahead, but here's where things get a little strange. Their share price actually dipped a bit on the Singapore exchange, despite the record sales.
Really, I'm not sure I understand that. Why would investors react negatively to such good news?
Well, there are a few possible reasons. One could be profit-taking. When a stock performs really well, some investors might decide to sell and cash in on those gains. That selling pressure can cause a temporary dip.
Makes sense. So it might not be a sign of anything fundamentally wrong with the company.
Exactly. It could also be related to broader market trends. The U.S. Federal Reserve hinted at more interest rate hikes this year, and that can make investors a little cautious, especially with growth stocks like those in the EV sector.
Ah, I see. So even good news needs to be viewed in a larger context.
Precisely. There's always more to the story than just one piece of news.
Okay, that's really interesting. So what else is happening in the markets?
Well, let's shift gears and look at something a bit closer to home. SingPost. They just appointed a new COO, NIO
SingPost, the postal service.
Yep, that's the one. And this new COO will be in charge of both their domestic and international operations.
Got it. I imagine that's a pretty big job. What with e-commerce booming and traditional mail volumes declining.
Oh, absolutely. It's a tough industry to be in right now, and it's a pivotal moment for SingPost. So it makes you wonder, does this new appointment signal a shift in strategy? Maybe a bigger push toward digital services?
It could be. I mean, they have been investing in logistics and e-commerce solutions for a while.
They have, and Mrs. Neo's background is in tech. So yeah, it wouldn't be surprising to see them double down on those efforts, but only time will tell.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things play out.
Speaking of interesting developments, let's talk about digital core REITs.
Okay, what about them?
Well, they've hit a bit of a snag. Seems they have a vacancy at one of their properties in Virginia, 8217 Linton Hall, to be precise.
A vacancy?
Uh-huh. And that can be a real problem for a REIT. Losing a tenant like that directly impacts their revenue stream.
Right, of course. So what are their options?
Well, they could actively try to find a new tenant, perhaps adjusting their strategy to match the current commercial real estate market. Or they might consider using the property for something else entirely. But this situation really underlines how important it is for REITs to have a diversified portfolio, not putting all their eggs in one basket.
That's a great point. Diversification is key in any investment, I suppose. Okay, so we've covered individual companies, but what about the bigger picture? How's the Singaporean economy doing overall?
Overall, pretty well, actually. The economy grew by a solid 4% in 2024.
4%. That's pretty good, especially with all the global uncertainty we've been seeing.
It is, yeah, and the manufacturing sector was a major contributor to that growth, although things did slow down a bit in the last quarter.
Interesting. So what's the forecast for 2025?
The outlook is cautiously optimistic, you could say, but there are definitely some things to keep an eye on, like any potential trade policy changes coming out of the new U.S. administration. Those could have an impact on Singapore's economy, seeing as it relies so heavily on exports.
So a lot to keep track of in the coming months.
Absolutely. And it just goes to show that even when you see positive news, like NIO's record deliveries, you always have to dig a little deeper, look at the bigger picture, the context. Because the market is complex, there are a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it's rarely black and white.
Right. And understanding all those nuances, all those factors, that's what helps you make informed investment decisions.
Couldn't agree more. So that's it for our deep dive today. Now, what about you? What stood out to you from today's market news? Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts.